What's up everyone, Wayne Grayson here, and you're watching Equipment World, where each week we bring you new videos on the latest in construction, heavy equipment, trucks, gear, and more. Welcome into the very first episode of The Dirt, a new weekly news show that we're doing here on the Equipment World channel that is aimed at giving you a quick rundown of the week's top stories in construction, along with interviews on industry topics. Now, obviously we're really excited to be bringing you this new show, and without any further delay, let's get into the week's top stories. Leading things off is the new equipment roundup. Komatsu recently introduced the first in its next generation lineup of wheel loaders, the WA475-10. Apart from a redesigned cab that offers more visibility, the standout new feature on this machine is a hydraulic mechanical transmission. Now, the machine doesn't have a torque converter, and it instead combines a hydrostatic transmission with a planetary transmission and uses a new travel speed control dial to allow operators to set speed. The change allowed Komatsu to get more power and fuel efficiency out of this loader. Now, we did a full video on the WA475-10, so be sure to check that out. Link is in the description below. Next up is Kobelco's new SK130LC-11. This is the company's first model in its new Generation 11 lineup of excavators. The 24,818-pound machine is powered by a 96 horsepower engine, and it's equipped with independent travel, which allows the machine to move, lift, and swing simultaneously without experiencing a loss of power. The machine's automatic swing priority delivers full swing power during combined operations without switching modes. To read the full story on the SK130LC-11, be sure to check out our website. Link is below. Case Construction Equipment has updated its entire lineup of compact vibratory rollers with 7 new models. The new E-Series rollers have high curb clearance and no overhangs, and they're designed for small to mid-sized jobs, such as driveways, walking paths, commercial developments, and around existing structures. Improvements on these new rollers include redesigned operator controls for more comfortable operation and an electronic control lever which places settings for RPM, drive, the sprinkler system controls, and parking brake at your fingertips. Now, rounding up our equipment roundup is Bollinger. The electric truck maker recently unveiled the chassis cab model that will be available for its upcoming B2, the first electric Class 3 truck that will hit the market. It's slated for 2021, and the dual motor B2 trucks will receive power from a 120 kilowatt hour battery pack and have a 5,000 pound payload capacity. Now, moving on to the top headlines from the construction industry, a new report that recently hit our website from editorial director Marcia Groover Doyle tries to answer the question, how long until construction recovers from the coronavirus pandemic? Now, the answer, it may take at least 18 months for contractors to see complete reconstruction of what was to be in 2020, before the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. The good news is that Anirban Basu, the chief economist of Associated Builders and Contractors, says this will likely be the shortest recession in history. In fact, Basu says that contractors should see an impressive bounce back in economic activity by the third and fourth quarters of this year, while cautioning that a complete recovery will, quote, elude us for years. However, another element to kind of keep in mind when it comes to the industry's recovery from the pandemic and any ensuing recession will be jittery owners. Ken Simonson, the chief economist at Associated General Contractors of America, says he has seen an increasing percentage of projects being canceled that haven't even started. And much of that could be due to owners being nervous that they could be facing another downturn like they saw in 2008. Meanwhile, Richard Branch, the chief economist for Dodge Data and Analytics, sees a 13% drop in both residential and non-residential starts for 2020. He forecasts construction starts to increase in 2021, with residential seeing a 3% rise and non-residential going up by 5%. Now, Marcia's story also goes into detail on how this recovery will effectively have 3 stages for contractors. So to read more and check out the whole story, head to our website. The link to this story is in the description below. In other news, equipment auctioneer Ritchie Brothers says that it has seen construction equipment prices for used equipment fall around 4% when compared to the same period in 2019. Prices analyzed included excavators, dozers, loaders, articulated dump trucks, compactors, motor graders, and backhoes. Declines were also seen in lifting and material handling equipment like cranes, booms, scissors, telescopic handlers, and forklifts. Those types of equipment saw an estimated 9% decline for this period. period. Now, rounding out the top stories for this past week is an article from our managing editor, Don McLeod, on how contractors can use mechanics liens to get paid. Now, Don spoke with Scott Wolf. He's the CEO of Levelset, a company which basically specializes in assisting contractors in getting paid. And Wolf calls the mechanics lien, quote, the unsung hero of liens. Now, Wolf tells us that these liens create, quote, a liability for other people on the job instead of just the company or person you have a contract with. Now, that's because the mechanics lien is attached to the property itself. The property could even be foreclosed upon if the debt is not paid. Now, the filer on a mechanics lien makes the property owner, the lender, and the general contractor obligated to your debt, even though you don't have a contract with them. And Scott says, quote, that's what makes these liens so powerful. Anybody who provides materials or labor to a job can use the property itself to pay them if their customer doesn't pay them. Now, to read more about how and when to use a mechanics lien to ensure you get paid for your work, check out the article on our website. The link is in the description below. So up next, we are going to move on to the interview portion of this show, and I am thrilled to welcome in our very first guest on The Dirt, Brady Lewis of Case Construction Equipment. Brady, how are you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good.
So Brady is the program manager for Project Minotaur, which has been a huge project in development at Case Construction Equipment for the last several years. Brady, could you tell us a little bit about what Minotaur is and about the DL550B that has kind of been born out of this whole process?
So Project Minotaur was an idea that Case came up with several years ago that's kind of making a hybrid machine that's a combination between a compact track loader and a small bulldozer. And so that was kind of our code name skunkworks project that we worked on and kind of brought a concept into ConExpo 2017. And then based on the feedback and the good reaction we had from that, we've continued on developing that. And then now as it moves into the production phase, the vehicle is called the DL550B. So this is a new machine, a new category that gives the customer kind of this two-in-one, that they can do the job of a small dozer, and not make a lot of compromises on the dozing performance because of the unique blade that we have on this machine, and then also still have a machine that can do the job of a compact track loader.
So Brady, could you tell us what kind of brought this whole project about, this basically a new machine category that you guys are calling it? What made you guys want to go in and develop a true two-in-one compact track loader?
It's a lot of the trends that we've seen in the industry over the past 10-15 years. As the CTL side of the business has grown bigger and bigger, Case has come out with larger models, their competitors have come out with larger models, and more the capabilities of a large compact track loader is moving in on that territory of the small dozer. At the same time, that small dozer market has shrunk. For years ago, Case used to make a 450 size dozer and a 550 size dozer, and the market just wasn't there for those machines. And so those, not just Case, but other dozer players have made their smallest machine is a little bigger and bigger every year. The other piece of it was, even as these compact track loaders are getting better, there are common, 6-way attachment blades that you can get on a machine, but it doesn't really quite do the job of a dozer. It doesn't perform as well. It's more difficult to control. And so we kind of saw that as an opportunity to create this machine.
And Brady, tell us a little bit about how the whole kind of project got started, or I guess kind of start at the beginning of the prototype phase.
Case was working to celebrate at 2017 their anniversary. So the call out to the whole company was, what cool ideas can we have? And Case has shown a history of innovation at ConExpo, bringing different concept vehicles to kind of gauge the industry and see where things are going. And that's really the genesis of Minotaur, was that project to try to what opportunities do we have for the future? We had done a little bit of market research and talked to some customers, and they seemed excited about it. But really, at that show was really where it took off. About the second day of the show in 2017, I remember thinking to myself that, this is going to be real. We're going to have to go home and put pencils to paper and really bring this thing to the market.
All right, so even at ConExpo 2017, you guys were like well into the show and kind of showing off like a fun project, a concept project, but still didn't, even until you got some of that initial customer feedback, still didn't really know how real this was going to be and how much longer you guys would be working on it. Is that correct?
When we went to the show, day one, we unveiled the machine in 2017. We weren't, at least personally, I wasn't 100% sure exactly where it would go. We had an idea that this could be good, but we really wanted to make sure that that the customers, the marketplace, that they also felt the same way. One of the things that Case tries to really focus on is our practical innovation. So it's not just making something cool because it's cool, because engineers like to do that, but it's making something that's cool that also can provide a very useful benefit to a customer. And we did quite a bit of research at that show. We surveyed people as they came through the booth and talked to them. We had specific focus groups where we pulled 10, 12 customers off into a little conference room and kind of dug into what things that they expected from the machine, and customers gave us feedback that kind of helped us make design decisions as we move forward.
Talk a little bit about building the original DL450 prototype from scratch. Like, how did you guys get started on that? Was it really just kind of like seeing what you guys had, and then kind of like once things were assembled, kind of moving from there? Tell us about that process.
Creating the very first concept machine, that DL450 that was at the show, was definitely an experience. Something that I've never been involved with. I've never worked in the automotive industry, but I think maybe it's a little bit about how similar to how they build their concept cars. So we had the idea, and it was really left up to our engineering team to determine how best to do that. We kind of divided up our engineering group into little miniature project teams and let them go wild, come up with ideas and bring anything that you can kind of think of. Basically the seed was CTO plus Dozer, run with it. And then as those teams pulled back together, they presented to kind of the managers and showed them, these are the ideas we had. And we basically picked and choose between those different concepts, and what the vehicle that made it to the show was kind of the best of all of the different project teams and their ideas that they brought together. Once we got to the point of building the machine, that was kind of another exercise in of itself. Is we were trying to make sure that things were staying secret. That's why we had the code name for Project Minotaur. We walled off a section of kind of our prototype shop so that people couldn't go into it and see what was going on. And we basically handcrafted that machine. We were able to use components from some of our existing products. We used a lot of components from our Dozer platform, and we were able to kind of make this machine kind of skunkwork style off in one corner of the shop to bring the vehicle that made it out to the show.
Now, I know that you guys don't really shy away from really kind of like cool looking or flashy concept looks. I mean, you could kind of see that on the Project Zeus, the electric backhoe that you guys unveiled at ConExpo 2020, but we've also seen it too on the Project Tetra. Were there any kind of concepts or concept drawings that might have been for Project Minotaur that might have been a little extreme or a little outlandish that didn't quite make the cut?
We certainly had some ideas that maybe pushed the envelope a little too far than what probably ultimately came to be. One of the interesting things about this project in particular is the design team that ultimately wound up designing the machine were also the ones that were working on the concept. Just the fact that you have the engineers that are ultimately know they would have to deliver this machine if it worked, that kind of keeps you a little grounded in reality. So it was, there's certain features of the machine that that weren't necessarily the most practical in the concept, but it's kind of like making sure that we didn't go something that was too far that would be unreasonable, because in the back of our mind we knew that at some point, if this all goes well, we're going to have to deliver on this machine.
After having gathered kind of feedback at ConExpo 2017, and then moving forward with the prototype that you had built at the time, at what point did you guys really start bringing in customers to really let them operate the machine and getting that real world kind of like on-site feedback to kind of inform your future decisions? At what point in time in the development process did that happen?
Customer feedback is definitely a very important part of the development process at Case. And so for Project Minotaur, we wanted to get customers in and driving the machine as soon as we could, but in the course of building vehicles, that does take some time. So essentially, as we came back from ConExpo 2017, riding high on this positive feedback and this wave of energy that kind of we got from that, is we immediately set to work on getting that machine ready for our own internal operators. So that's kind of the first step. Is we have operators that this is their job, 40 hours a week. They are driving, whether they're compact track loaders or driving dozers. These are kind of our professional expert operators. So our very first step was getting the machine to the state that it's no longer a pretty show pony anymore. This thing's got to get out in the dirt and get some initial feedback in. So we did that basically through the rest of 2017, making sure that we really understood how the machine performed, and that we worked on the next iteration of the actual vehicle is the time that we actually brought customers in. So basically, if you think about the original show vehicle, the DL450 is kind of our revision 1 prototype. Revision 2, after we had that in the dirt and actually got some feedback from our Case operators, is the version that we were able to bring out to customers. And you've seen videos on the internet where customers were driving out in Arizona proving grounds. Was kind of our first feedback from customers, getting their feedback in operations, and trying to get that feedback in early in the design process so we could make sure if there were changes needed, we could make them.
And at what point in this process did the prototype machine really start looking more like the DL550B that you guys have introduced to the market?
So the most significant design change was probably that version 1 that was at the show to version 2 that the customer started driving. So that was where we had customer feedback from the show. We had all those focus groups that we did, that they were able to get their input. And for example, we made a very large decision in changing the machine from a radial loader arm lift type to a vertical lift type. That was really based on the customer feedback we received at the show, as the application of the Minotaur in its CTL role is really something that they wanted, that vertical lift performance, to be able to lift high and reach far into a dump truck or something like that. So that version from version 1 at the show to version 2, that the first thing that customers got to drive, that was probably the most significant changes. After that, there's many other versions, but generally, the design starts to coalesce. So that very first iteration has lots of changes. The next one a little less so. A little, as you get further along, the at least the very visible changes reduce. Later versions of the prototype probably don't look as significantly different from their earlier brothers, but it's the kind of the insides of those is really where the details are getting ironed out.
All right, so Brady, one of the things that you mentioned was that change from a radial lift design to a vertical lift design. What are some of the other customer-inspired changes that you guys have made to this machine during the development process?
One of the things that makes Minotaur unique, and actually from a development side makes it more difficult, is this dual-use application. Case has years of experience knowing what a dozer customer wants. We have years of experience knowing what a compact track loader customer wants, what applications they're going to put their machine in, what the things they're going to try to do. But Minotaur being this new machine, what are customers going to do with things? Is they're going to drive around like a compact track loader most of the time, or a dozer, or some 50-50 ratio? So that's definitely, this customer feedback is very important to try to make sure we're incorporating it. So some of the things we changed besides just the radial lift, vertical lift, is we made some changes, especially in the control operation. Once we got the machines into a customer's hands and kind of had some feedback from them with our controls team to make sure that the vehicle reacts the way that they want it, that we actually changed the way some of the switches were laid out, the way on the machines that have a ripper, the way that's activated that entire system was made sense maybe to an engineer, but didn't make sense to the customer just sitting in it. You never have looked at the manual, how do I raise the ripper? It wasn't as intuitive as we liked. So we made changes and kind of made that improvement. We did quite a few rounds of bucket development as a CTL, and that particular machine, we put our biggest available bucket on the machine, and it just wanted more. So we built a bigger bucket, and then that wasn't big enough. So then we built a third bigger bucket. So trying to make sure that we are really listening to the customers and using their experience has definitely improved the machine, because that gives us a lot better variety. One thing, me personally, that I've learned about that on the dozer side is the differences that you get just from ground conditions. The testing that we do in Utah is not the same feedback that we get from a customer in South Carolina, just because their soil conditions are different, the application, the weather is different, and so a lot of those details when it comes to dozing are different. You want to set your blade a different setup based on what you're working in it, and that has definitely been an advantage of having a wide variety of customers and a wide variety of applications, as we get pieces of that information from all kind of angles to be able to make sure we're making the right design decisions.
All right, so Brady, you mentioned having to kind of tweak some things and figure out exactly what bucket size you guys needed to put on this machine. Could you kind of tell us what the standard bucket size is for the DL550B and why you guys landed there? What sort of things were some of the operators and some of the customers running into that some of the smaller buckets just weren't enough?
So the basic machine is available and with the same bucket that we currently offer on the rest of our CTL lineup. So our TV450 has what we call a heavy-duty extended bucket that is about 2/3 of a cubic yard. So that was kind of the basic starting place with Project Minotaur. And as we sent out our prototype machines out to customers into their applications, and these guys, they're just filling up that bucket and just dirt is just overflowing the back of the bucket. And they, kind of the feedback is it could definitely handle a lot bigger bucket. And we actually had a couple enterprising customers in the Chicagoland area that had some light material, more like a snow bucket, but they put that on the Minotaur and they said, oh yeah, this is a lot better, And so we that kind of coalesced into about a 1 cubic yard bucket. So we went from 2/3 to a 1 cubic yard. We actually fabbed one up, in the prototype shop, pretty quick and dirty, but got it back out to the customers, and they the feedback we got was, yeah, it could handle more. And so we've landed on a 1 1/4 yard bucket, which is, from the very beginning, I would have never expected that was where we wound up being, but that's kind of the feedback that we got from the customers. And it's really just when you're doing this dirt operation, you have this machine that in CTL version is rated at 5,500 pounds at 50% of tipping. It can handle a huge bucket, and that productivity and the power, and the guy that's really is trying to get paid by the hour, that's what's really important to him, to where he can make 1 trip to the dump truck instead of 2.
Well, you mentioned earlier too, kind of trying to figure out what that split in terms of use case and use time between CTL and dozer mode was going to be, but I think that becomes, this angle on the bucket, it kind of becomes less and less important, in terms of the split, just because they can really kind of, we'll get into the blade in a minute and the C-frame, but they can really kind of depend on this thing to be like basically the most powerful compact track loader that you guys sell. And in fact, I mean, you can't really buy a just kind of like regularly spec'd out compact track loader from Case and the CTL lineup that, you know, comes close to the amount of power that this thing has, right? Like, can you talk a little bit about just how, like, if you're looking for like the most powerful CTL you could possibly get, like really, actually, then you should be kind of interested in what the DL550B has to offer. Is that right?
The DL550B, just as a CTL, if you exclude all of the Dozer pieces of it, is definitely a very powerful, very productive CTL. So it's about 1,000 pounds ROC rated higher than our current largest machine, which is the TV450. And it's one of the most powerful and highest lifting heights and capacity to lift of anything that's out on the market. And so we've really designed the machine to meet that customer application, that they want to be able to lift things very high. I think our lift height is 140 inches to the hinge pin. We've got hydraulic horsepower that exceeds anything out in the marketplace. So this machine could be perfect for a guy that's, you know, running a mulching head or a cold planer or something like that. And really the Minotaur, because of the dozing application, that has really driven the rigidity and the strength of that machine, and the robustness, but that has positive effects as you also do it in a CTL operation. So even though a customer may have not a huge need for a dozer, just the fact that this machine has the capabilities as a CTL is another excellent selling position.
Now, of course, there's several more kind of like pieces of differentiation apart from what I'm going to say here. But for me, in terms of kind of like what else is available on the market, if you're wanting to do dozing with a CTL compared to the DL550B, like to me, it kind of all boils down to kind of to two things. And one part we just talked about with just kind of like, this isn't just a CTL with a dozer blade. It's the most powerful CTL that you guys produce with a dozer blade. But then what's attached to the dozer blade is this integrated C-frame and even the kind of like ability to add steel tracks to this machine. And so what you guys have done, you just kind of mentioned it there, is really kind of added this like robust kind of integration with the C-frame and the dozer blade. Kind of talk about like what was it's. I know the C-frame was on the prototype in 2017. So was that one of the first thing that you guys arrived at? Like if we're gonna do this, it can't just be a 6-way attachment. It's got to have the ability to kind of channel all that force and not have it go through the loader arms, but really kind of go through the kind of chassis of this machine. You know, was that early on? Talk about the development of that C-frame and just kind of like how big of a differentiator that is for you guys.
The integrated C-frame is definitely a critical feature of Minotaur. And actually, if I had to, you know, if I made a list of all the things that were about Minotaur, that integrated C-frame is definitely the number one on the list. It's the most significant piece of the design, and it's also the most important, most thing that, you know, defines what Minotaur is the fact that it's not just a CTL with a blade put on the front. This is a true machine that can go out and do a dozing application. And actually, when we talked earlier about the kind of the development and the kind of the design teams that we scattered out all of our engineers and, you know, let them spend some time coming up with crazy ideas, that was one of the crazy ideas. So not only just the idea of, hey, let's attach the blade to the chassis, they actually had kind of came up with the concept that we actually ultimately wound up with, was this 4-bar linkage. You're using the lift arm structure of the vehicle to basically give the vertical force up and down. But with this 4-bar link, you're not transmitting any of that horizontal loading into the chassis structure. So the C-frame is definitely one of the most defining characteristics of what Minotaur is.
All right, and so kind of the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, Brady, is I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about what maybe the differences between what you guys heard from customers in 2017 versus 2020. ConExpo 2020, when you guys unveiled the DL550B, at least one other competitor brought a CTL of their own to that show, equipped with a dozer blade, equipped with machine control. So do you guys, I know that you guys are treating this, you've got like a dedicated production line for the 550B. You guys are kind of treating this like a serious kind of like product category moving forward. But what remains to be seen, apart from that one other CTL at ConExpo with the blade, is do you guys see the competition and the rest of the market kind of walking in step with you guys on this? And what's your kind of thoughts on the market for this machine right now?
If you went back in time and talked to Brady in 2017, I honestly, we had a few ideas. We had, maybe a couple of use cases in mind as we were putting together. The application piece of it, I can remember, standing at the show talking to customers, and it seemed like every third customer could think of a new way to use this machine. And, we talked to, original kind of the concept talking about residential construction, small job lots, that type of thing. And you guys come up, well, hey, what about doing it forestry service? You got all these roads to work on. And I remember another customer that they actually ran dozers down inside some sort of mine. So they had to crane drop in this dozer down inside of a giant hole in the ground and do, dozing down there. And they said, oh, this machine will be perfect for it. So I think that the applications and the possibilities is something that we've definitely learned as we've gotten customer feedback and tried to incorporate that into our design process. I will be the first one to admit, I don't know that this is necessarily going to be the machine for every single person. If a guy is doing heavy dozing and using a Case 2050 dozer, the Minotaur is not going to do that job. But a guy that wants a little bitty tiny skid steer to go inside a barn and clean that, it's not going to do that job either. But we feel like that there is this marketplace for a machine that gives you the ability to do compact track loader jobs, big compact track loader jobs, and then also the small end of the kind of the dozer market, where in particular we had a customer that had several CTLs in their fleet, but they didn't own a dozer. They rented one 5-6 times a year when they had a job that they needed to do a dozing application. This is really perfect for that guy because he can use it as a CTL, most of the time, but then when he gets a job that requires a dozer, he doesn't have to go rent one. He already has kind of the machine in his fleet. So we definitely saw that opportunity for the marketplace to grow is something. And like you said, Case is treating this like a new category. We are investing in the product, investing in the manufacturing side, that we're able to go out there and have a very successful machine. Within the industry, we've seen some moves, as you mentioned. There was some similar looking machines that at ConExpo 2020, and I think that kind of validates that maybe we're onto something. It's not just Case over here to the side doing something weird. That there are some smart people in the industry that outside of Case that also can kind of see this potential. I think that there are probably varying degrees of how much you make this machine. I think Minotaur is really trying to hit the dozer side of that market with our integrated C-frame and all of the strength and rigidity and the robustness we've built into the machine. Some of the other concepts may be more on the lighter end, where they're more CTL focused and more similar to what we have on attachment. But I think there's a spectrum there, and I think that as customers get machines, that they will put them through their paces, and we'll see as time goes on. Our customer feedback is definitely a part of development process at Case, but it's not the only, that's not the only time we listen to customers. And so we will be certainly gathering more feedback as time goes on, and hopefully this machine is successful into the future. And as we get new applications and new use cases, we'll definitely be making sure that we incorporate those into the product.
All right, Brady, thank you so much, man, for joining us on this very first episode of The Dirt. Hopefully the first of many, but thank you so much for your time and for your insight. on Project Minotaur and the DL550B, and hope you're well, and thanks again, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So that is going to wrap it up for the very first episode of The Dirt. Now, new episodes of The Dirt will be available right here on the Equipment World YouTube channel every Monday. And every Monday, we're going to be wrapping up the week in construction industry and heavy equipment news and have new interviews for you. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you're not missing out on those, and turn on notifications so that you're getting up-to-the-minute alerts whenever we drop a new episode or a new product review. And if you liked this video or found the information in it useful in any kind of way, please do us a favor and hit that like button. It really helps us out. And we also want to hear your feedback on the show. If you have any ideas, any suggestions on what we should cut, what we should add, any kind of topics that you want us to cover, please hit us up in the comments below and let us know what you think. We love hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for watching once again, and we will see you next time.